Welcome to Muddy River News this week. I'm Bob Goff. Muddy River News, of course, furnished by Harvey's Furniture. Well, we are certainly in the middle of the beginning of school starting and school board meetings on the state level and the local level. And a lot of that going on as we tape this program on Wednesday afternoon. We're going to talk about a lot of the things that have been happening and that are going to happen, and what is the future with mask mandates and how children will be affected as they begin the 2021-2022 school year. I'm with Steve Lucy of We Stand for Our Students, and I'm also with Jen Wiemelt, who's a parent here in Quincy, and she's been also working with that group and also trying to talk a little bit about trying to get some really clear ideas of what the rules, regulations, and ramifications are. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve, I'm going to start with you first because this morning the Illinois State Board of Education had a meeting in which they allowed folks to come and talk a little bit about the mask issue. Kind of give me the thumbnail of what happened this morning.
Well, it was pretty strict. You had to go and sign in during a certain window from 8:30 to 9:30 to get on the docket, and then they took you upstairs to the meeting room, and I think there was maybe 45 people that spoke. Several superintendents, a few people just like me, but mostly superintendents and parents of school kids, school board members. Darren Bailey was there and he spoke. Another representative, I don't remember his name, he spoke. Regional Office of Education superintendent was there and they spoke. So it was basically 2.5 hours of, to sum it up, everyone collectively asking the State Board of Education for local control. They said that, like I've said before, that the local people can make the decisions the best for their local school, and that's what they were asking of the State Board. The State Board of Education and the superintendent, Ayala, they listened to us. They didn't interact with us, but they did listen to what we had to say, and hopefully that word gets across. That's what we're hoping.
Jen, as Quincy schools begin today, from your perspective, you've attended the last few school board meetings. We'll attend the one going on tonight. Where do you see this thing right now?
I do believe it's kind of a twofold debate. I think that it is important that parents continue to call and express their opinion to the Illinois State Board of Education. Certainly the governor, if they disagree with what he's doing, he needs to hear from the constituents. But I don't think that attack needs to be on a local level. I think our board members are trying to do the best job that they can. They're trying to protect the students, make sure that they're following whatever rules they need to. I think our biggest question for them now is, if you're going to follow it, then follow it, but why aren't there exemptions allowed for people that conscientiously believe that this is wrong? So the masking, the testing, and the vaccines all have emergency use authorization. So our biggest question is, there is state laws right now that protect our right to make conscientious health choices. Why aren't we allowed to exercise those rights when it comes to our children in school right now?
Steve, one of the things that I saw that came by earlier this week was Senator Tracy wrote kind of an op-ed for consumption amongst her constituents, and she said, "Look, we don't like this, and we don't, we want there to be local control. But right now, even our lawyers and the House Senate staff and the lawyers and the House Republican staff are saying it looks like the governor and his executive order, as of now, do have the final word." What are your thoughts on that?
I read that, and I'm not a lawyer, and I've heard a couple lawyers say that that's not true. I heard a lot of calls today from superintendents saying, "Hey, show us the law, please. We've asked you, we've sent you letters. Can you cite the law, the actual law that gives you that power?" And they haven't got a response from the State Board of Education. So I honestly don't know the answer to that. It looks to me like it could go either way. I think, from Warsaw's perspective, where they are a school that's now currently on probation, they're trying to kind of go down this rabbit hole and find the answers from the State Board of Education to what they need to do next. But if they seemingly have that power and are not afraid to wield that power at the moment, they have that power, right? So that's got schools concerned, and I think it's got citizens and taxpayers and superintendents across the state concerned, because we want to have it right. everybody wants to get it right. The parents want to get it right, the school boards want to get it right, the lawyers want to get it right. But we're not going to know that till we get some rulings on it, it looks like. And that's the tricky thing, because we don't want to put kids at risk of losing any recognition status, or something to that nature while we're waiting to see.
And as you mentioned, 29 schools on probation, Warsaw, Central, Mendon were included in that grouping. 35 schools across the state had voted to sort of buck the mandate. But I think one of the things that, Steve, you've talked about, and Jen, you've talked about as well, are the strength in numbers. That if you could go to your school board, Jen, and say, look, we would like you, and the school attorneys in this case, to say, look, you guys all work for us. Would you consider banding together and working with the other schools in the LUDA districts and for the bigger schools and in the small rural districts? Would you guys, working with your regional superintendents, would you guys all consider going together and just asking for this? That doesn't hurt anything, does it?
No. And that's certainly what we've suggested. I think there's some sort of, for lack of a better term, like herd immunity, when we all kind of stand up for this together and say, hey, we're looking at the metrics in our area. We want the right to make these decisions. We think that we're the best capable, and we answer to our people that elected us. So give us that back. Let's band together. Let's go to the Illinois School Board of Education. Let's go to the governor and say, why can't we have this? Explain it to us. Steve,
what are you expecting at the Warsaw meeting tonight?
I'm expecting some people to be concerned that Warsaw will lose recognition status. I think they're afraid for their students' athletics, their students' diplomas. I think they're afraid for their, staff, superintendents' licenses, teachers' licenses, because all that has been thrown out there as a concern, right? And the key word is fear again, and we've heard it time and time again. We're afraid of this, we're afraid of this, we're afraid of this. Really, it's not a concern about COVID too much. I mean, at Warsaw, I'm not saying that the numbers won't change. I don't know for sure. But people have kind of dug into that and figured out that we're going to have to live with that somehow, at least in our area. So I think what's going to happen tonight, we're going to have people voice their concerns about that, and then hopefully we're going to have, the superintendent, the board president will voice the reason of why we're still okay, because right now they don't have a meeting with the State Board of Education. I believe it's Monday they have a meeting. And so our status is simply the same as it's always been right now. Nobody's in trouble for anything. They are on probation. That means the next step is non-recognition. But for right now, they're not at that, and they should have 60 days to come up with a new plan after the meeting on Monday. So essentially, I think it's a lot of fear that's unwarranted. Now, I don't think the school or the school board has any intention of pushing it out that far and checking that. But, I don't know. The taxpayers, they're kind of tired of the government threatening their kids and threatening them. So there's that whole angle as well, right?
Well, and when you talk about the state and dropping the hammer on funding, that's one thing. But when you're getting to all these other side issues like the superintendent certification or a teacher certification, if they don't enforce something, that seems. I mean, again, this is all about local control, but those seem like major overreaches there. Yeah. But that's just, again, for me.
And that got brought up this morning at the state board meeting. Was, is this a big overreach? Even if the governor has the authority to issue these kinds of mandates, which that's arguable, should he have? I mean, he came out at the beginning of the summer and said, you school boards all have the right to make these decisions for your local communities, and they put together well thought out plans, proceeding from that guidance from the governor. Now he's backtracking. It's not a good look. It's not a good look to the people, and it's taking away the accountability from the local school boards, which they were happy to take on. Yeah. Right? So I think that's our biggest problem. And that ends up looking very, very, it's just not transparent at all. And that's our biggest problem too.
And that's always, I know that's been a concern in Quincy, is the fact that the board meets and then the board votes and there's no public discussion amongst the 7 board members. Whereas you've gone to these other meetings in these other towns and the board members will banter back and forth during the course of the meeting. And in Quincy, it just doesn't happen. And we've had, this will be our 3rd meeting in 3 weeks. You had the meeting where it was, okay, we're going to be optional or recommended, but we're not going to enforce it. Then the governor came out with his mandate and they went back to say, okay, now it's mandated. It was a 5-2 vote, but still it was mandated. And now we're at this meeting, which, there's nothing really more Quincy's going to be able to do because Quincy's already said we are going to support it. So since Quincy's already said they're going to support it, you basically just want to find out the one question, which is why won't you honor the exemptions, correct?
Correct.
And
I think that covers liability on all sides, right? The school is still following the mandate. And while we can still pressure at the top, at least we're able to exercise our rights. And I have not been answered, I've not gotten an answer to that question. That's very frustrating. And I think that from talking to other voters in the county, on all these other school board meetings, their constituents maybe disagree, but at least they're hearing the thought process on the vote. We're not even hearing that in Quincy. No. And it comes across as very condescending.
And I think that's, again, to see these other districts where they've had this open discussion, but also at other districts, we've been covering these, and David Adams has been going out and about covering a lot of these, and we've had boards that have had members say, "Hey guys, I'm sorry, I'm done," and they're quitting over this issue because they are put in an awful position.
They are.
They are. I was on the school board for 17 years, and I understand what Jen's saying because I've seen it in Quincy and some other places. And I was never that way. I don't know if that was just personal, the way I was, but a lot of school boards are that way, and I don't think it's right. I don't think it's the proper governance. I think if you are open with your constituents, you have to follow the policies for sure. Follow your board policy, but it's okay to discuss things with the public if you need to, especially if it's civil. If it gets out of hand, the board chair can stop that. And I just think we need to get back to that more and show that that's the way we need to be handling things. Really, I don't know what other boards are going to end up doing in this situation, but I know tonight I think Warsaw is going to have a nice discussion with their constituents, and I think it helps bring unity to the community. Right now we have division everywhere, don't we? And that was brought up a little bit today by several superintendents, and even myself, I've been super strong, hard-lined on, I think it's not okay to mask children personally. I don't think it is okay. But I think it is parents' choice to have that right. Mm-hmm. And the state board has taken that away from them, and I don't think that's okay. I think they should have the choice. And I think they're putting boards and superintendents against each other. They're putting teachers against superintendents and board members. They're putting families against each other because some families disagree. And none of that happened throughout the summer in June. It was like a big sigh of relief. And we were starting to come together, right? Yeah. A lot of people. So it makes me wonder, what's this all about? Kind of makes me worry about that a little bit.
Well, I think that when you look at these issues amongst all these communities, especially in our area, again, the smaller communities, you're going to, if you all sing from the same hymn book, or you all come together with the one voice, and the school attorneys and the school boards, if you get a majority of school board members who say, look, we want to directly appeal to this. We're going to go along right now, but we are going to directly appeal and ask you to show where you have this authority. And I think if those school boards would come, if you have these 35 school boards who voted to buck the system, if you will, and you have the Quincy's and some of these other ones who said, yeah, we're gonna abide by it. We're not thrilled about it, but we're gonna abide by it. I think if you just had a large group of those, and again, you've got I think the ROE needs to be involved in this. Mm-hmm. I think they really need to kind of have this whole united front from downstate to just say, look, we've got to. You do have the right for certain things, but when it comes to certain issues and local control, you have to give that back, because on July 17th, I believe, is when the governor said, it's up to the local districts, and then 3 weeks later is like, never mind. And you like Jen said, that really threw everybody for a curve. Mm-hmm. And now we've had, every school board has had special meetings and other time, and having to do all this. So So Jen, again, you're at Quincy tonight. Steve, you're going to be at Warsaw, and then we will have some kind of a follow-up again, I'm sure, and we'll kind of see where things are. And Jen, talk a little bit about some. I mean, you know, if we're not if someone's not satisfied with the way the public schools are going, and also the parochials because they're masking too, are there other alternatives that are being considered by the people in the community, such as yourself?
Certainly, immediately would be homeschool. There's a couple co-ops already set up in Quincy, so those are immediate remedies if you're that unhappy with what the schools have decided. And I think more the long-term goal would be to set up a freedom-loving charter/private. But you know, of course, that takes a lot of community support to get off the ground. But I think those are the short and long-term options right now. Otherwise, you know, it's kind of like, hey, keep fighting, but try and keep your kids out of this as much as you can.
Steve, I assume the answer for you guys isn't to put everybody on the bus in Warsaw and drive over to Keokuk. That's not an option, right? That's
not an option. I'm a fifth-generation farmer, and we've been there. A lot of people around me have been there for a lot of generations, and it's harder for us to just, first of all, in our hearts, it's harder for us to just pull up and leave. People just can't quit their jobs and take their kids to different places. Some can't homeschool. Some don't have the resources. That's why the public schools are so great, and Quincy is one of those. They service all groups of people, right? So at Warsaw, I told them today, we've done an excellent job over the years of locally deciding what is best for our kids. And we put out a lot of great kids from our school. We have a lot of, you know, people that go back into education, doctors, pharmacists, nurses, servicemen go into the service, technical people, all things from Warsaw. And our graduation rate is one of the higher ones, you know, in the state. So we know how to do things right if you let us do things. And the concern is, what are these parents going to do? Our public school may never look the same after something like this if kids decide to go somewhere else, or parents decide to start a private school, which they're fantastic ideas. Mm-hmm. But we've all lived in the community for so many years. We want our school. We love that part of our community. So we want to keep that.
Absolutely. Steve Lucy and Jen Wiemelt, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Well, as you said, Muddy River News will be following this issue because it's far from over, and we'll see how this continues to evolve. And of course, we'll also keep an eye on the COVID numbers and see if there's going to be a plateau or what have you. And again, it's an issue that a lot of people are concerned about, and that's why we are dedicating the coverage that we have to this important issue. I'm Bob Goff, and once again, thanks for watching Muddy River News this week, furnished by Harvey's. We'll see you next time.